Let's have words. Let's have words. Say what it's all about. We're gonna say what it's about. We're gonna talk it out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Have Words. Let's Have Words comes to you every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, broadcasting from Southern New Hampshire on WWHR Internet Media. So, you may be asking yourself, well, what is this show, Let's Have Words? So, Let's Have Words is a talk show. That's what we do here. We have conversations. That's what Let's Have Words means. You think Let's Have Words, you think, fighting, but let's have words basically means let's just talk things out instead of using our fists, we'll use our words, right? So so that's what we do here. We have conversation. We celebrate the art of conversation. So what we usually like to do on Let's Have Words is we like to have a guest of some kind on that we can talk to about some interesting topic, and we cover all sorts of topics, ranging, as I like to say, from the mundane to the profound. But so you never know what we're going to talk about on Let's Have Words, but most of the time we prefer to have a guest on the show, somebody I can interview, somebody with some expertise in some area that I can talk to. And sometimes when we don't have a guest on the show, what we do instead is we just kind of have an open discussion. We pick a topic, and we just kind of shoot the breeze about said topic. So I think that's what we're going to do tonight. In fact, I know it for sure. We're going to have an open discussion. So, as your host, Lara Samuels, you and I are going to have a conversation. So, like we like to say, you are the guest. You are the guest on the show. The audience is the guest. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about our topic. I'm going to tell you what it is in just a moment. I know you're dying to find out. After about a few minutes of me talking about the topic, we're going to open the phones, open the chat. You can call in, you can chat in. And by the way, on a show like this, calling in doesn't just mean on the telephone. It means actually coming on with your video and jumping into the conversation that way. And by the way, I'm not sure if I've made this clear in the past, so I want to make it clear now, that if there is somebody in the studio and there's a conversation occurring, you can come on even then. So we can have a 3-4 way. I wouldn't want too many people at once because that can be hard to navigate, but as long as we have a few people in the studio is just fine. So if there's somebody already in the studio and we're having a conversation, it's perfectly okay for you to come on as well. But if you're shy, you don't want to be on camera, but you still want to participate in the conversation, you can always chat in, which just means that you type your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll work it into the conversation. So, tonight's topic, you may think that tonight's topic, if you had to guess, because normally, what's behind me here on the green screen is, somehow related to the topic of the evening. And this is the case tonight as well, but you may be looking at the objects behind me, which you probably have identified as trees. There's other stuff, but mostly trees. And you may be thinking, we're going to talk about, deep ecology, or we're going to talk about bark beetles or paper manufacturing or something. But you would be wrong. What we're actually going to talk tonight about is stress. And so why do I have trees behind me then? Well, because I'm just going to make a full confession here. I am actually a pretty stressed out individual. I would say on the neuroticism scale, I'm pretty high. Those of you that know me may or may not be surprised to hear that. But in most cases, I think the high stress lifestyle sort of suits me. I kind of thrive on stress. I like to have a lot of things going on at the same time. I like to be involved in a lot of projects. I like to constantly be on the go. I have a very hard time actually relaxing, which is probably taking its toll on me physically. But I have a very, very hard time relaxing. I like to tell people that, I really like the idea of a bath, but the very few times I've tried to actually take a bath, I spend about 5 minutes in the bath, and then I'm like, I gotta get the hell out of here. This is boring. Seriously, that's how bad it is. I can't just chill. But there are a couple of things that do help me chill, and one of those things is being in nature. So if I'm out, very sad. Thank you, Ronnie. Being out in nature can make me feel very, very chill. And the trees. So the trees are going to help me feel calm tonight. I'm going to try to stay calm tonight. I'm not going to get excited. I'm going to talk like this. I'm just going to be. Got my trees. I'm out in nature. I got my tea. I'm good. So that's why I have trees behind me. Because trees or being out in nature, that's a coping mechanism that I happen to use to help me with my stress. There's a few other things I do. I like to take walks, for example. That's really helpful. And why I like walks? Because it actually calms me down, but I'm on the move. Like lying in a bathtub or something like that, or getting a massage or something like that. You got to stay still. But with a walk, you're on the move, and so that really helps me. I like to be in motion, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I have a really hard time relaxing. So the reason, you may be wondering, well, why are we talking about stress tonight? Well, the reason we're actually talking about stress tonight is because this book right here, The Relaxation Response by Herbert Benson, you may or may not be familiar with it. It came out sometime in the 70s. Forgive me if I don't know the exact date. I think it might have been 1975. But I read this book fairly recently in an effort to train myself to calm the fuck down. So I read the book. Did I actually learn? I did learn a lot from it, actually, but did I actually implement the relaxation response? And the answer to that question is no, I did not. But I do want to talk about the relaxation response. And the reason we're talking about the relaxation response is because Herbert Benson, unfortunately, after a long, relatively fruitful life, passed away the other day, like a week ago, of heart failure and kidney failure. He was 86. So, lived a long life. And he's a local person. He worked in Boston, I think, and he was involved in sort of mind-body sorts of experimentation and studies. And he's credited through this book with sort of bringing meditation, because actually the relaxation response is just another phrase for meditation, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years, right? I'm not exactly sure how far it goes back, but looks like Mark has done his research for me. 5,000 BC. So, long time ago. And lots of different cultures have practiced forms of meditation over time. But the relaxation response, this term, sounds a little more scientific. And he kind of brought meditation into sort of that world, the science world. And what he was interested in back in the 60s and 70s is he was interested in people who practiced transcendental meditation, and he noticed that they were able to lower their blood pressure and lower their heart rate, and that it had very positive physiological effects. Meditation did. So he was really interested in finding out why that was, and also could meditation or the relaxation response, excuse me just a second. I'm having like a tickle in the back of my throat. Be used. Maybe it's the trees, I'm allergic. Could the relaxation response be used by people who, because he was a cardiologist, right? Could it be used by people to help manage their cardiovascular conditions, especially hypertension? And I think his conclusions, if I recall, were basically that yes, it can be used for that. And It's cheap, it's easy, anybody can do it. And his version of meditation is not very time consuming. It doesn't have a spiritual component to it. It's basically just sitting, somewhere relatively quiet. I guess it doesn't even have to be quiet, just sitting somewhere where you're comfortable, closing your eyes and repeating a phrase, whatever phrase works for you, whether it's a religious phrase or, a phrase that makes you relax. If you're a Wall Street executive, maybe you can repeat the word money over and over again. Whatever makes you feel calm, okay? So you might say something like "be here now" or something, or you might say peace or love or something. Whatever you want, you just repeat it. It's a mantra, right? You just repeat it over and over again, and you concentrate on your breathing. It slows your breathing, slows your heart rate. And it's a mindfulness practice, so you're just right there in the moment. Anytime any thoughts come in from that, I should be on my way to work right now, I'm going to be late, or anything like that. Any thoughts that come in, or I should be grocery shopping, right? Anything that comes in during your relaxation response, attempt should just bat it away with the phrase "oh well." You just say "oh well," right? You just say "oh well." So you can't get stressed about the fact that you have these stressful thoughts coming in. You just have to swat them away, "oh well, oh well." And he advises that you say that "oh well" every time any thoughts come in, and then you just go back to focusing on your breathing, focusing on your word or phrase. You do it for about 20 minutes a day, every day, and presumably it can have some positive health effects. Doesn't cost anything. Anybody can do it. No side effects, right? And he recommends that people, especially people who are at risk for hypertension or other cardiovascular conditions, that the relaxation response can be very helpful. So, I still have the tickle in my throat, by the way. I'm fighting it. You may be wondering what this means, the response, the relaxation response. It's actually the opposite of fight or flight. So you may be aware that when humans are in a stressful situation, we have our fight or flight response that kicks in. So, for example, if I'm sitting in my nice peaceful forest and a monster comes out behind one of these trees, surprises me, my fight or flight kicks in, right? And my heart beats faster, my pupils dilate, my mouth goes dry, I may start to sweat. And that's going to help me to fight or fly, or run away from the stressful situation. So it's adaptive. The fight or flight response is useful if you're in a forest and there's a monster, right? But the relaxation response is the opposite of that. So it's actually, it's using your body's physiology to oppose that natural stress response, which, by the way, is adaptive until you are until things that are not actually threats are activating your fight or flight, like a test or a job or a marriage or, whatever stressful situation you happen to be in is activating your fight or flight, and especially if that's happening over and over again. So, for example, if you have a super stressful job or a super stressful marriage, or you're in a super stressful relationship, or you're a child and you're experiencing poverty or oppression or trauma, and that's the kind of thing when your fight or flight response is activated every day, all the time, that can lead to chronic stress and lead to all kinds of problems, health problems, including a weakened immune system, cardiovascular issues, respiratory issues, mental health issues, and of course all the things that people do to cope with that like smoking, drinking, drugs, whatever people use as their coping mechanisms, can also lead to further health problems. So stress is a big problem, big problem. Before I open the phones, and the relaxation response is just a very simple, very elegant coping mechanism. And basically, once again, it's just meditation. That's all it is. But rest in peace, Herbert Benson, made a nice contribution to society and brought sort of the idea of meditation into the mainstream with his very famous book. So rest in peace, Herbert. Couple of statistics before I open the chat. So I looked up the American Psychological Association's stress in America, because we're kind of local around here. We like to sort of focus on what's going on locally. So in America, I don't know about the rest of the world, although I think statistically Americans are among the most stressed out people in the world. We can talk about that. Call in, chat in, let's have a conversation. Why are Americans so stressed? Right? We're among the most stressed out people in the world, but I don't have those statistics, unfortunately. I'm sure I could get them if I wanted to, but 75% of Americans, according to the APA Stress in America survey from 2010, and this was in 2010. The pandemic has exacerbated things, but 75% of Americans experience stress above what they think is healthy. That's a lot of people. 3 out of 4. Children, this is another conclusion from the Stress in America survey from the APA in 2010. Children as young as 8 are reporting that they experience physical and emotional health consequences associated with stress. So more children are experiencing stress in this day and age. And this kind of summarizes the whole thing. Americans appear to be caught in a vicious cycle where they manage stress in unhealthy ways and lack the willpower and have time constraints that impede their ability to make lifestyle or behavioral changes. So not only are Americans experiencing lots of stress, we are also unable to or unwilling to adopt coping strategies, either because we don't have time or we don't have the will or we don't know how. So that's the state of, that was in 2010. I don't think things have gotten much better. So I'm going to say that that's the state of things, more or less, in America right now. So we are stressed to the gills, folks. So what are we going to do about it? Anyway, open the phones, open the chat. We can talk about stress. So what makes you stressed? What kinds of things stress you out? What are some coping mechanisms that you use to deal with stress? Are you a calm person? Do you not have an issue with stress? Some people are quite calm. There's definitely differences in personality, in ways that people cope with stress. Some people have a lot more, a stronger reaction to stress than others. We can talk about why that is. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's genetic? Do you think it's learned behavior? Have you become, these are just some questions I'm thinking about, right? Have you become less stressed out as you've gotten older? I know I have. How about you, Conrad? So Conrad's with us. Conrad's a frequent contributor to Let's Have Words. He comes on and we like to chit-chat about stuff. I bet you he has a lot to say about stress. So, what do you think? So let me just ask you, are you a stressed out person? I think you're muted.
I am. It depends. It depends.
It depends.
So I'm not stressed out by nature, meaning I've learned not to be, I guess. Or is that maybe as I got older too, I got, in general, less stressed out. more philosophical about things and less angry about things.
Yeah, me too.
Things do annoy me, but I take it lighter now. I get less upset
Right.
with various annoyances, bureaucratic or traffic or whatever the hell. Still do, don't take me wrong, but just I believe age for a lot of people, at least for me, made it milder.
Yeah, you are, but were you a stressed out person in the past? Because you strike me as just your entire personality is pretty calm, don't you think?
I think so.
Or were you more stressed out in the past when you were younger?
Well, again, it depends on circumstances.
Yeah.
There were times over the years I think I was more stressed out or less stressed out because that was environment dependent. Situation, whether it was a job or whether it was the friends I hung around with.
Yeah.
Like moving to a new section, moving to a new school was always a stress. Whether
Yeah.
whether it was in Europe or coming back. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just going
For
from
those
New
of you who don't know, Conrad, tell us you came to the U.S. in the 1970s from Poland, and you didn't speak any English at all when you first
Very
arrived.
very little.
So it was very very stressful situation for you at that time,
Right.
and you had to adapt to a new culture.
And that was more. There was a lot
Yeah.
to it. I was a foreigner for a while.
Yeah. So along with the normals, and that's when you were a teenager, right? So along with the normal stressors of being an adolescent, you also had to cope with being in a completely different society
Right. So this
and
was
you didn't even speak the language. So that
This was extra
must
hard.
have been tough. Yeah.
That was extra big stress.
Extra
But
stress.
But even in Europe, I moved once. We moved in elementary
Yeah.
school, and that was so things like that. A shock to the system, I would call it.
Yeah.
Changing schools, changing, moving, new friends, new neighbor, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's by definition. And I think that's normal. Like nothing wrong with that. Some stress because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your car breaks. Oh, you get stuck. You know what I mean?
Do you think we've become more stressed out over time? I mean, do you think so? There's lots of things that influence stress, obviously, but do you think there are generational effects on stress? Do you think that people presently are more stressed in the past, or do you think that there's just different sources of stress?
I think it's different sources of stress.
But people are just as stressed now because there's all these stress-related illnesses, right? That are much higher now than in the past.
Well, people live less.
The
healthy
rates
lives.
of stress-related illness,
Yeah,
lifestyle connected illnesses are much higher now.
Well,
in
before
the
people
past.
worked harder, so they had less time to be stressed.
They had less time to be stressed.
When you work hard, you're tired. You have like a cycle, and
I hate to tell you this, Conrad, but people still work hard.
not like they used to.
I think that the type of work that people do on average is different, but
No, I'm talking about physical. No. I strictly.
I know.
I mean,
But we've gone from being like, a manufacturing economy to a more service-based.
no,
But so we the types of work that people do on average is different. But being in an office or being behind a register or being, in retail or something, those types of jobs are stressful. They may be stressful for different reasons than like working in a factory or something,
No,
but they're still stressful jobs.
what I meant was not really the type of, but what you said exactly, because you're sitting down. And I meant the more physically you work, it's like going to the gym. They claim it's healthy. You know what I mean? And I'm just saying work.
They claim. I'm sorry, Conrad. I think that the jury isn't out on that one. Exercise is actually good for you.
And that's what I'm talking about. The further you go
Yeah.
back in time, the people worked more physically.
Mm.
So hence, they had more gym time.
Oh, you
And-
mean just they incorporated their exercise into their daily.
Well, it was required. It wasn't by choice. When you use a shovel and a pick instead of a machine, well,
Yeah.
guess what? You're 10 times more physically tired. There's no
Well,
comparison.
that's true. Like working in an office or whatever, you're sitting on your ass a lot
That's
more.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So the jobs became
Yeah.
physically lighter, which is, good and bad. Obviously, your joints wear out longer. Your
Yeah.
physically may last longer before you wear out. Because
So
people,
so
but
you
also,
have you have an interesting cultural take on this. Do you think that Americans in particular, forget generational effects, just do you think in our the American culture is a very stressed out culture in
well,
general?
so maybe you can, just to continue what I was saying. Yes, because Americans had physically lighter. This is just one aspect of stress. I'm not. There is 20 others. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
One is that you'll have less physical exercise during the day than you're saying that with generations we are getting more stressed. As time progresses, right? And
Yeah.
I'm just trying to put an explanation on that. That over the years we will, it's lighter and more office work, less shovel work, less.
But don't like compared to other similar economies like European countries, Americans work more. I mean, we work our fucking asses off in America.
Yeah, I was just talking about
People
this.
are working 2 jobs, three
Yeah, no,
jobs,
and that's more stressful than that.
and that is like
No,
yes.
I was strictly talking about
We
the
don't, and
physical.
we don't have. I don't think Americans. I'm just talking, in general here because everybody's in a unique situation, obviously. But I think that Americans as a group don't have a lot of good like work-life balance. I mean, I think people are starting to come around to that notion, but I think the work ethic is really baked into to our our thinking, and this whole like I know that when I was younger, I was a workaholic. I would work all the time. And at some point in my like late 40s, I woke up and realized that all I was doing was killing myself and that, I was working to make somebody else rich basically. I was just killing myself and I refused to do it anymore. And now I just accept a subsistence based lifestyle where I have my basic needs met, and that's it. And I'm fine with that. That's good. And then I have more time because I'm not working as much. And
That comes from that's with age. That's most people comes up with that comes with
yeah,
age.
maybe, but some people don't. Well, I'm lucky. I don't have kids, and I don't have other obligations. So I can do that sort of thing if I want to. But I just think that but I still think that there's a lot of that baked into our culture, and maybe it's changing. I think it is changing. I think, so, like some, some of the things we've heard, especially with the pandemic, with people quitting their jobs and all that. I think people are beginning. I think younger people. I wish
Right.
I had realized it a lot
right.
earlier. Are
Younger
beginning to realize how exploited they are.
Younger people are a little bit different.
Yeah.
I
So,
think from my own.
all right. Let's move on. Let's move on here. How do you cope? So what are some coping, if you do have stress, let's talk about one that you're doing right now. Smoking cigarettes. That's a coping mechanism for stress.
I'm not so sure.
You don't think so?
I think it increases stress. It helps an addict if you're addicted.
Yeah.
Nicotine increases blood pressure. It's a stimulant. It's not a calm me down thing. It's the opposite.
No, of course not, but no, you're right. I mean, like the effect that it has on your body is as a stimulant, but people use smoking as a coping mechanism for stress. I mean, I used to smoke, and then I used it as a coping mechanism for stress.
Yeah, no,
People use alcohol as a coping mechanism for stress, and drugs, and video games, and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Eating,
Yeah.
yeah. What are some healthy things that you do to cope with stress? Anything?
Work, physical work
Physical labor.
around the house
I see.
nowadays.
Do you think that helps alleviate your stress?
Yeah, essentially, it's like it takes your mind off of it. It keeps you busy, then you feel good afterwards, so you get some satisfaction. And the exercise aspect is not trivial. Again, I laugh at gyms, but
Right.
it is. There is a health. There's whatever chemicals I don't know about. I never studied the biology of this. some endorphins get released probably because you do something good, you get a little happier.
Yeah.
Some physical work, little project. I'm not talking about big projects.
Well, probably just the physical exercise alone too.
And that's
Yeah.
what I was getting
And you're
to.
doing, and I think you're the type of person that likes the fact that you're getting physical exercise, but you're also doing something productive. In other words, you're not just running on a treadmill, right?
Well,
You're
I have a
actually,
whole theory about that, but I don't want to mention it again. I brought that up before. Exercise is a sin, but that's
oh, no, we don't want to, that's not true. Give me a break. So there are
sweetness treats. To me, it was always, if you want to exercise, go and get it. I grew up, there were old men with these long coats with big brooms sweeping the sidewalks by hand.
Okay.
So that's what I grew up with. That's what you exercise. That's, you're old, you can't do anything
Yeah.
complicated. Exercise.
Well,
Okay.
exercise, but exercise itself makes you feel really, really good. I mean, it's worth it. It's
Well,
worth
that's why
it to
I said-
invest the time.
That's why
I
I said
exercise
physical.
regularly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
over the years, I realized it's both. It's the exercise part and some satisfaction that you did something.
And it increases anyway. Exercise is an excellent coping mechanism for stress. All right, so wait to cover it. So folks, call in, chat in, let us know what you think. So are you a stressed out person? Are you a calm person? I want to hear from some calm people and understand, what it is that makes some of us a lot more resilient. So I was reading some articles about the genetics of coping. So, the scientific question being, are some people genetically predispositioned for resilience versus other people that are not? And there's been some studies done. I don't think there's any conclusions that have been drawn from those studies, but they have identified, like I read this really interesting article about, and this is terrible because they're torturing mice, and I'm an animal rights person. I don't like the fact that they're using mice. Poor mice. I just got to say that before I mention that they were taking mice, okay, and putting them in a situation where they were getting shocked, electric shocks. So they were shocking the mice. Some of the mice would develop what they call learned helplessness, where they just lay down. Eventually they don't want to escape from the pain and suffering, so they just lay down. Like, this has been demonstrated. This learned helplessness thing has been seen, has been seen in many animal studies, and also in people, that they get into like a very painful, stressful situation, but they are so used to it that they just give up. Like, they just, right? So some of the mice do this learned helplessness thing where they just kind of like don't, try to get out of the situation. And then some of the mice tried to get out of the situation. They tried to find ways to avoid the pain and suffering from the electric shock. So you've got your mice that are trying to get away, and your mice that are just basically not doing anything. And then they compared their brains, like the activity of these two groups of the brains. And they looked at a particular place, I think, in the prefrontal cortex. I don't think they looked at the amygdala. I can't remember. But they looked at like the prefrontal cortex, and there's more activity. There was significantly more activity in that part of the brain, on average, in the mice that did the learned helplessness thing versus the mice that got away. So in other words, the general conclusion, basically, there are brain differences. Now, whether that's genetic or learned or whatever, but there are brain differences in the mice between those that just, give up when they're stressed, they get depressed, basically, versus the mice that actually try to are more resilient, right? So they've seen these brain differences in mice. So there might be some differences, like actual anatomical, physiological differences between people who are calmer, and more resilient versus those that react very poorly to stress. What do you think about that?
For me, I think it's very, very likely. I never read up on it much, scientific stuff. But to me, it seems by definition almost
Yeah.
that different humans sort of difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but just because there's differences, there's definitely differences in human. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the question is that learned? Is that
Well, it's
genetic?
I
Is
think-
that
I
can you
think
change it? Like, can you become a less stressed out person
I think it's mixed.
through will?
I think the environment is definitely how you grow up. Definitely has something to do. Is a factor, and genetics probably the biology itself probably is too. A factor. Not I don't know what's the major. You know what I mean? I wouldn't put weight.
Well, it's hard to say. There's so many factors, of course, but
Right. But it's I do believe that's a factor. So
yeah.
I was going to bring up one coping mechanism. You asked
Oh
me
yeah,
earlier.
coping mechanisms. Go for
It's
it.
different. And one is good old thinking. I don't like to
Thinking.
be stressed. I don't like to be stressed. So when
Yeah.
something happens, sometimes the stress is just innate, your situation of life or whatever, and you can't just change it. You can move to the moon or to Venus,
Sometimes you can get out of a situation. Sometimes you can't.
Some of it is for whatever reason, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But there are things that get me stressed. And then I realize, why am I getting mad at this or something's getting me stressed? And I'm like, it's really not that bad, not that big. I'm just hit me like that.
Yeah.
It took my stress. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna be stressed and just deal with it. Whatever happens, you spill milk, you wipe it off. Don't freak out.
So you do some self talk.
Right, self-analysis.
Wait, you're like you use some you're like rational. You're like, wait a
Right.
minute.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
somewhat.
Step back for a moment.
Right,
Is
it's
this
not
really
just one.
is this worth getting all upset over or not?
Right.
Yeah.
And even
But you've
if-
taught yourself to do that over the years. Like that's a wisdom thing.
Well, if you want to call it, thank you.
Mark is very stressed right now because Facebook is preventing him from commenting on his own broadcast. Facebook. So, yeah, coping mechanisms. So that's good. So just thinking, you mean just like using logic, using rationality
Right.
to convince yourself that it's, even if you're feeling that way, that it's not worth feeling that way.
Right, let's
I
say
do
people-
that a lot too, but to varying degrees of success. Sometimes my emotions just take over. And I'm
Well,
just,
So over
there's no talking me out of feeling stressed.
over the years, whether it's aging or whether I'm getting quote wiser, you know what I mean? When I
Yeah.
learned, got better at it. I probably practiced it for years, so I got better at it over decades because I've been doing this
Yeah.
for decades now. I don't want to be stressed. I don't want to, punch somebody in the face or have to get a drink.
It's not worth it.
Because you get.
You know
drunk.
what's really good? You know what's really good is forgiveness. I've learned, definitely, this is something I've learned over my years, that forgiving people is a very healthy thing and a really good way to cope with stress. Like if you're somebody who hangs on to things and holds grudges and is constantly, pissed off at other people, that is going to just build up and build. It just hurts you eventually, I feel like. But you have to be willing to just figure out how to let things go, and just like, look, it's not worth it to hang on to this anger. It's just hurting me, So forgiveness, I think, is a healthy coping mechanism for stress, among other things.
So I want to use something that a little similar but different on that.
Okay.
To me, it's not forgiveness really, because I won't forgive a murderer, a killer that did it for money or for fun. And so,
Forgiving is different than forgetting.
no, I'm talking about forgiving.
Yeah, forgiving is
Not everybody
different.
should be forgiven.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But what I have learned that understanding that we are all humans, meaning imperfect, we all make mistakes.
Right.
That's first, it's just dumbness. Well, the person just made a mistake and it hurt me.
Yeah.
Did something bad, consequence for me. Sometimes they do it on purpose out of greed. And this is where, I'm not coming back to the car mechanic or the doctor again, or whatever, this business again.
Yeah.
Greed.
Yeah.
Again, because that's very self-conscious. And sometimes I know people get angry out of, they blow up and then like.
Well, anger is natural. I don't think suppressing your anger is a good thing to do, but I do
I'm
think.
talking about when somebody gets angry
Yeah.
at me.
Oh, when somebody gets angry at you, yeah.
I deal with that. I'm talking about causes
Right.
of stress, how I
I
deal
see.
with
Right.
stress.
I wasn't listening
And,
closely.
you
Yeah.
know, so when people cheat you, it depends, how
Right.
poor are they? You know what I mean? If they millionaires, I hate them. If they very poor, oh, I understand it.
You
You
also
know,
got
so,
to. You also got to. I think people have to realize, and this is a wisdom thing too, that you realize with age is that people change over time. So sometimes you can't hold people responsible for something they did 20 years ago. It's
right.
like they've learned their lessons too. Life is a life that you learn. This is what you do. So
That's right. This is what I meant. This is what I
yeah,
started with this little talk
So
is
you can't hold
understand.
on to stuff
You
for
know,
too
I have
long.
more understanding towards people.
Yeah.
Towards human nature. That, hey, I'm not perfect either. Eh? I just control maybe myself better than many people, but still, some understanding of
Yeah.
and this is about people in general.
There's two. So there are two approaches. There are two general approaches to stress: problem-based coping and emotion-based coping. So with problem-based coping, you focus on like removing the problem. So for example, if you're stressed out at your job, well, maybe you can get another job. So that's that by getting another job, you're solving the stress by solving the problem, right? But a lot of sources of stress you can't address that way. Like maybe you can't leave your job, or like maybe your children are causing you stress and you can't leave your children, right? So the other part is emotion based, where you focus on how you deal with the stress or how you cope with the stress, right? So if you can't solve the problem, I think that's always the best thing. If you can get rid of the thing that's causing you stress, that's good. But a lot of times you can't.
Well, that's what we were talking
And
about
so then
earlier.
you have to focus on the emotion based, which is focusing on how you handle the stress,
Well, and this is what I was saying earlier.
doing
When
better.
things cause me stress, a lot of times I just think them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what I do for stress, and I can't believe we haven't mentioned it already, is music. I mean, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, music is an amazing stress reducer.
yeah.
Either
For sure.
listening to music, playing music.
Hmm.
Thank God for music. That's my medicine right there. That's my biggest, that's
Yeah,
the thing I take in the largest
for me,
dose.
music and some physical exercise.
Music, exercise. Well, yeah, but just music by itself is,
Yeah,
is an incredible
outside of thinking, that's
stress
another that's a
reducer.
third. Yeah, for me, that's another third way. That's more physical to me,
Yeah,
more like exercise.
yeah.
So I would put it, like more biological. That's something what I mean, a little
What
bit
about
out of my
deep?
control.
What about deep brain stimulation? That's going to be so. Eventually, we're going to identify where stress is in our brain, and we're going to be able to like where little. We're going to be able to stimulate different parts of our brain to decrease our
Well,
stress.
so my opinion on that, something like that, would be strictly use it under prescription.
Oh, well, I think that at this
For,
point,
pe-
that's yeah,
for people who are sort of over certain limit, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And general, because otherwise I think stress is good. It forces
Stress
us to
can be good. Use
stress
stress.
forces
Yeah,
us to change, to learn. Like for
yeah,
me, the example I was, the thing I was saying earlier, that when something stresses me, I think about it, and like,
yeah,
why am I stressed? I start analyzing, and hence I'm learning.
yeah,
I mean, I'm getting, by dealing with stress one way, like that, I'm actually, getting new thoughts and new point of view, changing myself a little bit, hopefully for the better.
yeah.
you know, Usually it's for the better because it's to have less anger or,
Well,
not,
hopefully it's for the better. You're not
no,
trying to change yourself for the worse. I
no,
hope.
it's for the, no,
All
but
right, all right.
learning how,
So
learning how to deal with stress makes you a better person. That's what I was saying.
they're right. It does. So
So,
so
so to me, some
definitely,
stress is
definitely.
good, and if there was a magical cure to get rid of it, watch out. It may screw up humanity.
Wow. Well, we're going to get back to that. We're going to get back to that discussion. But right now, I just want to remind people that we're sitting here. I'm sitting here with a caller, Conrad, frequent friend of the show, comes on, and we're talking about stress. We're talking about what causes stress, coping mechanisms for stress. So we're looking for people to call in or chat in if you want, and tell us what you think. Yeah, we are having some issues with Facebook, I guess, but that's okay. Just letting you know that you're always welcome to come on the show if you would like. If you have some input, maybe there's some people out there that have some that are very calm and have a magic formula for us. For those of us who are not calm, like me, I need to get some lessons from a calm person and find out how I can become less stressed. Although we did talk, so Conrad, you just mentioned that good stress. There's good stress. There's definitely good stress. It's called eustress, I think is the official term for it. It's good stress. Stress that, actually makes us motivated and productive.
Right.
And I think a lot of
Change
this,
that improves us.
yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of, I'm a stressed out person, but I use my stress to be productive. But then there's negative stress that can wear you out over time and cause serious health problems. I mean, it can wear out your immune system, wear out your cardiovascular. I mean, stress does a lot of damage to your body.
No,
Probably more than, or just as much as like smoking cigarettes or anything else if you add
Right.
everything together,
Right, and this is the permanent stress, something that's like a disease.
Chronic stress.
It becomes
Yeah.
like a disease, and that's where medication or the brain stimulation, whatever, that's where I would say, okay, the doctor can prescribe it now. Because if it's permanent and it's like a chemical imbalance in your brain, you can't just magically fix it, by yourself, without some intervention.
But you think you can talk yourself out of, do you think people who are very stressed out can just simply learn how not to be stressed out?
I think so.
You think so? You think they can teach themselves
Right.
techniques?
Well, if this, as long as it's not physical for some reason, constant pain or I don't know, what I mean. But if it's stress that, like the subject is more mental, psychological,
Right.
then yes, if it's psychological, then it's all just like a computer program. You can change it. You can't change the computer.
Right.
If the computer is messed up, biological, that's different. But if it's just your thinking, which is like software, just bloody change it.
Yeah.
It's not easy, sometimes it's very hard, but it's
A little cognitive behavioral therapy, just
But it's
kind of
100%
change the way you think about
right. But
something.
it's not
Your
99%.
attitude, basically. Yeah.
Right. It's not exactly. It's not 99% possible. It's 100% possible.
Right.
You could all, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's why it's complicated. It's not a.
Yeah. I think that, I think over time, for example, I think I have become a less stressed out person over time. I'm much less neurotic than I used to be for a variety of reasons. But I think one of the reasons is I've taught myself some of these
Right.
coping mechanisms, or you just learn stuff over time. You learn that it's not worth your time to hold a grudge, for example. You learn that that you have to deal with a certain amount of stress. Like you can't just have a meltdown because of the slightest thing that occurs. Life is stressful, and you do have to deal with a certain amount of stress, and you learn that over time. And that your breaking point. I think your breaking point gets more and as you get older. You can tolerate more stress because you realize that it's normal. Like you are going to have to deal with, for example, you're going to have to deal with people you don't like at work. That's something you're going to have to deal with. You just can't, and you're going to have to work with people you don't like. That's just one example. So the only thing you can do is learn how to work with people better or learn how to tolerate people better.
Right.
And so I think you develop and also just having and also just not sweating the small stuff, kind of those sorts of little lessons that you learn.
Yeah,
But I still think like when I'm being exploited, this is something I've never been able to. I have a visceral reaction to being exploited. Like if I feel like somebody's just like using me or manipulating me, I am like it sends me through the roof, like fight or flight wise, and I have a very hard time talking myself down.
Well,
I get very upset.
So I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly if you're talking about the work.
Work mostly.
I accepted it years ago. That a factory owner, company owner,
Yeah.
the investors, the banks that invested in my company, that blah blah blah. They getting the real millions, and I'm just getting paid. And
That upsets me.
You see, it doesn't, because to me that's how the world works.
And what's causing a lot. Well, I mean, we haven't even mentioned really the pandemic. I mean, obviously, just contributing massively to people's stress, but also, what else? I think our political climate in the U.S. right now is incredibly stressful. I don't think I have ever felt more insecure about the future than I do right now. Like, I just feel like America is super divided and, like, to a point, like, to a very extreme point. And there's a lot of anger and a lot of hatred and maybe a lot of that was fueled by Donald Trump, I believe, you know? And
Because, yeah,
yeah, I mean, he just stuffed, it was already there, but he, like,
he
fueled
brought it
it.
up. He brought it up when he opened. Well,
Oh, big time.
So-
And I'm that is causing me a lot of stress right now. I don't feel as comfortable in my own society as I used to feel.
well, it was like that in '70s in different ways.
Was
but
it?
was in '70s. It's racism and different things happening. People living in the cities, and just buying. So there was problems between rural and the
Well,
city.
there are always those problems. I'm just saying, in my lifetime, I've never felt more insecure.
So what I remember in '70s when the high inflation, there was many things.
Yeah,
happening.
yeah,
Vietnam War,
economically,
there were many things.
economic stress, obviously.
Stress,
Yeah.
the lifestyle, a lot of changes.
Yeah,
And people were talking to me, oh, you met the '50s, those were the good days.
yeah, whatever.
So there were, post-war America, everything.
If you're a white male middle class person, it was great.
Well, rancher, there were
Yeah.
rancher. Yes, but absolutely right.
I wonder if rich people, I wonder if being rich. So in some way, what is rich? Obviously, I mean, it's all relative. But I mean, I think like the super rich, people that have a lot of properties or a lot of things. I wonder if just being rich causes a lot of stress. I think that like the more you have, the more you have to protect, and the more stressed out you become. I think there's a certain freedom in not having a lot of stuff, a lot of things, as long as you're getting your basic needs met.
Well, it's very. I have full of comments on that too.
Oh, good. Go
full
for
of
it.
comments on everything.
Comment away.
So from my experience, because I haven't, again, I've looked at that issue a little bit over the years, that it's the kids that have of the rich people that have the problem. They grow up, they don't need to do anything. What am I going to do? How am I going to outdo my father? You know what I mean? Like, because usually you want to be, hey, they did this and I can do more. That's, at least for boys, it was like that.
Yeah.
And the rich kids were famous for being going crazy, being essentially stressed from not knowing what to do with their lives, day to, stuff like that.
Well, and high expectations can be very stressful for kids.
Poorer kids, it was simple for them, do this, get a job, start work, there was sort of, I hate to say, but no time to come up with, no self-imposed stress. And rich, I think, and again, if it's somebody who did this from ground up, he just spends his money, you know what I mean?
I think people who are super rich also, because they develop a certain level of paranoia. Like the world wants to take advantage of them, or is out to get them, or is they're unsafe. That they're always having to be sort of protective or something. And so that constant feeling of that the world is the people are out to get them.
So there is a famous saying.
Paranoia.
There's a famous saying, I think, an American saying that expresses what you're saying. And this is a warning towards, this, I want to be rich. If you amass enough gold, there is no power on earth to protect it.
Yeah.
On earth, never mind cops or FBI, there's no power on earth.
Yes.
1,000 people army, million people army, 10 million will come and get you.
Yes.
If you amass enough gold, well, there's no power on earth to protect you, and that's.
I think being super poor is a lot more stressful than being super rich, though.
In different ways. Yes.
Well, I think
Oh, yeah.
I think all things considered.
Well, because
not being able, being completely oppressed.
Yeah.
Not having access to your basic needs. I think that's much more stressful than
absolutely
not being able to get into an elite college, I would say.
Well, no, but with No,
get to
but with the
compare
rich, it's
those
the
things.
purpose. With the rich, it's the purpose.
Yeah, no, I know, but whatever. It's all relative, really, and stress. And once again, sometimes it comes down to how you cope. How you deal with it more than anything else.
Also, rich people cope with it by being starting foundations and stuff, but giving,
Yeah, yeah,
helping humanity in some other ways. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So that's the way
Some of
to
them.
air. I got all the. Well, in general, there is.
All right, let me look. We got a few more minutes, so I want to do one more question. How about technology? What do you think? Technology and stress. I think technology makes us very much more stressed out. You know what stresses me out? I call it the millennial symbol of frustration. That little circle thing that does this when you're waiting for something. That causes me a lot of stress.
I don't like it, but I find something else to do if it's too long. It's not that I'm used to that, I guess. So
I think taking a tech break can be and going out with the trees, spending more time with nature
well,
can
definitely.
help
As,
with
as
your
far as
stress levels.
as far as that, definitely there is a lot to say comparing machines sitting in front of a computer
Yeah.
or being in nature. There is yes, nature does have that effect on us. I can't explain it.
Yeah,
too
I
well.
think that we're overstimulated. I think that that's very stressful for humans. Our brains. Our brains are adapted to a different environment, and the environment is changing at an accelerated pace, and our brains are not keeping up. And I just think we're overstimulated. I just think that alone is causing way too much stress. And
Oh, I,
one way to counter that is to simplify your life, and not and purposely get away from all that
no, I agree that
stimulation.
at least in my intuition, without doing scientific reading, like reading
Yeah, right. I don't have anything
the
specific to
closer
back it up.
part
But
of
yeah,
nature we live, the most automatically there will be a degree of more stress. Whether we have brains have more time to be stressed, or
yeah,
because when you're outside, you are busy with noises, with wind, with things are happening. A bear could be coming at you. But there are things going on a little bit around you.
yeah,
When you're inside, but you're protected. Inside of a building house.
yeah.
Now your mind can go free more. So I'm not sure why, but it is like that. Yes, for sure. That nature is.
Nature is a marvelous cure. It's not a cure, I guess. It's just a treatment
Yeah,
for
exactly. It
for
is just like
stress.
music, just like music, similar to music.
Music,
It's
art,
subconscious.
just doing art. You start doing some art, you get into that flow. You're very calm.
I wouldn't
I
know.
think that has the same effect as the relaxation response.
I wouldn't know. I've never done it.
Oh, that's right. You don't do art.
I've never done art.
Yeah, art can actually be a source of stress though. I don't know if you've ever struggled to write something and you can't figure it out, or tech is a major stress. Yeah, that's right. Keeping us tied to our work, Ronnie. Not me. I don't listen to those people. Once I'm gone, I'm gone. Like goodbye. But yeah, but a lot of people aren't in that situation, and especially if you're working from home, now you're even more, connected to your work.
Yes.
So that's definitely a source of stress. Mine, you got to have work-life balance. You
No,
got to be
that
able to
adds.
separate the two.
Yeah, no, that definitely adds. When I started working from home more and more, and eventually became the norm,
Yeah.
it became I work 24 hours a day, meaning
You
when
were
I'm in,
always could be working.
right. It's
Yeah.
like
That's how it was for me when I was like a traveling, not a traveling nurse, a home health nurse. You know, it was just I was always working, or I always could be working. My day never ended, basically, because because I had documentation I could do, or I had so I would get up at 2 a.m. and start documenting
and that's what
on,
that's the kind of thing that the
because I
work.
didn't have time to do it during the day.
Well, and
So
also, if you can do it at home, it's always on the list somewhere. You know what I mean? In your brain.
exactly, you just want to be able to separate from it, and
No, there
some
was
people
a,
don't
no,
have that ability.
so there was a degree of healthiness about the old punching the clock in, punching the clock out.
There was. Exactly. It's like I'm gone. I'm done. It's
100%.
push it
Go on
away.
that.
I know.
Percent.
We need to go back to that.
So, but
Workers are, anyway, I think people are taking more action to change things. I'm very actually optimistic for the future of
we are improving.
working class America. I
Right,
think
we
that
are
people
trying-
are beginning to not to accept some of these things that are just basically stress inducers, and make our lives awful. So anyway, this has been an awesome conversation about stress. We talked about coping mechanisms. We talked about mostly about coping mechanisms, but we also talked about some other things related to stress. And as usual in Let's Have Words, we didn't necessarily come to any conclusions, but Let's Have Words is about conversation. It's about just hanging out and talking and getting a variety of perspectives, hopefully. We could have covered a lot of territory on stress. Obviously we just scratched the surface. So anyway, that was a very enlightening episode of Let's Have Words. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, we're always looking for people to come on the show to interview. This is our favorite thing to do. We want to interview people. We want to interview you. So, I'm sure you have something. If you're listening, I'm sure you have something that you could talk about. It's a very stress-free environment coming on to Let's Have Words, a very casual environment. And we'd love to have you. So please send us an email, wwhrmedia@gmail.com, and just tell us what you'd like to talk about, and we'll get you on the show. You can do it from home, so it's, you don't have to go anywhere, and we'd love to have you. So in the meantime, let's all find some ways, thanks, Ronnie, thought-provoking conversation. That's what we're about here. Thought-provoking conversation. That's what we try to achieve, so I'm glad we did to some degree. So let's all try to find some ways to de-stress, unless you're a calm person already, in which case you should have called in and told me the secret. Anyway, you can tell me some other time. But in the meantime, just keep those lines of communication open.
Let's have